Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to have all of you here this afternoon, this bright afternoon of autumn. Norwalk Hospital is very proud to be sponsoring medicine and spiritual healing. Despite the great technological advances in the last 50 years, in an area where robotic surgery is routine and our equipment, MRIs, can determine and detect an emotion and a thought, 65% of Americans say that are very unhappy about their medical care. The time for the disease-centered medicine is gone and has proven to be a failure. Integrating all aspects of care, all that we have available, including mind, body, and spirit, should be our goal. We physicians have to become aware that we cannot cure, but we may and must entertain all our efforts to heal the human soul and body. The program this afternoon will address the issues of spirituality and healing, so that the public can understand the steps that we are taking also in the field of medicine, in the field of integrative medicine, to address the issues that have for so long been neglected. The two speakers this afternoon are very dear to me personally, very influential in my life and my career. I believe that a good moderator should actually disappear, and that's what I'm going to try to do, and let the speakers talk. I have a couple of things that I have to announce. As Dr. Siegel said, everybody wants to know where's the bathroom. There are two bathrooms over there and over there. So the back and the front, the program will consist of lectures by Dr. Bernie Siegel and Divaldo Franco. There will be 2 intermissions and a final hour for panel discussions, as well as questions and answers. I'd like to ask you now to please turn off your cell phones and pagers, or place them into silent or vibration mode. While you do that, let's all take a deep breath, so those sounds can... Oh. Thank you. I have so many thanks to give that I'm not going to give anyone, because so many people have helped. But they all know that I know, and I have them in my heart. Books regarding questions and answers. We ask you to use the question cards and that you got at the door, and place them at the 2 baskets that we have just at the front stage. We will collect the questions and answers by 4 o'clock before the second break, so that we can address that in the final hour. Discussing with Divaldo and Bernie yesterday, a great idea came out, and I think we will spend some part of the final hour in having Bernie comment on Divaldo's talk and Divaldo comment on Bernie's talk. Books from both authors are being sold in the back during the breaks. And after the program is finished, they're both going to be signing some books if requested. There will be bottled water in the front here, and I ask that you don't bring any drinks, other drinks or food into the auditorium. It's great to be at City Hall, but they ask us a few things, if any, it's not to bring food into the auditorium. I will quickly proceed to introducing Dr. Bernie Siegel. Bernie, how he prefers to be called. Now a retired oncology surgeon from Yale, author of the bestseller book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, and many other books. He needs very little introduction. He has touched many lives all over our planet. In 1978, he began talking about patient empowerment and the choice to live fully and die in peace. As a physician who has cared for and counseled innumerable people whose mortality have been threatened by their illness, Bernie embraces a philosophy of living and dying that stands at the forefront of the medical ethics and spiritual issues our society grapples with today. He continues to assist in the breaking of new ground in the field of healing and compassionate medical care. It's a pleasure to have you here, Bernie.
And I really also want to thank Norwalk Hospital, I think, for having the courage to do something like this. And hopefully we'll see more and more hospitals doing this. My lecture today is on PMS. The practical, the mystical, and the spiritual. Also, as Claudio mentioned, that there's a difference between healing and curing. Doctors don't tell you there's 100% mortality associated with life. But what I watched and what changed my life was a woman saying to me, I need to know how to live between office visits. Okay? And that's when I started support groups. What do you learn? When you send 100 letters to people with cancer saying you want to live a longer, better life, come to a meeting. This is how many people I expected to come. And less than a dozen women showed up. So you also realize you don't know your patients. And there are a lot of people who don't want to live. But you can also learn from the survivors, and we'll get into that. And that's what I began to learn. When we healed lives, I always talk about my friend who's a landscape gardener, John Florio, because John had extensive carcinoma of the stomach. He was retiring, which is not an accident if you get sick at that time. And when I said to him, you need more treatment, he said, no, you forgot something. What'd I forget? He said, it's springtime. I want to go home and make the world beautiful, so when I die, I leave a beautiful world. 4 years later, the nurse hands me his chart. I said, he's dead. So we have 2 patients with the same name. She said, open the door. So I opened the door, and John said, I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business. To make a very long story short, he died at age 94 with no sign of cancer. And that's what I began to see, and as I say, we'll get into it. The other part, I have to say, and I feel safe talking to you people, is that when I was 4 years old, I took a toy apart, a telephone, unscrewed the dial. I don't think they'd make them that way anymore. Put all the pieces in my mouth because I'd seen a carpenter working with nails and doing this. And I aspirated them, was choking to death. And it's a very unpleasant way to die. I still feel it. Your diaphragm, your chest is sucking and no air comes in. And then something wonderful happened. I left the body. And I was up at the head of the bed looking down saying, oh boy, this is great. I said, now, almost every kid has this feeling, but my parents are going to find me dead. I feel bad about that. But literally, if you had said to me, which do you want? I chose death. And I was mad as hell when I didn't die. I yelled, who did that? Because I had decided. And it made me even feel that there must be a God, that there's a schedule. So you're not in charge of whether you live or die. So I said, okay, if I'm not in charge, then, I'm not going to complain. And the other, many, many years later, because I have certain qualities in my life, okay? We've always had a house full of animals, broke every zoning law that there is. We're living on an acre, and you got goats and ducks and geese in your front yard, and all kinds of exotic pets in the house because veterinarians began to send us these creatures to rescue them. And again, it was out of love. I have to add that never were we reported. The police even would help me sometimes when I couldn't find some of these creatures. And never did we get reported as breaking the law because everybody enjoyed the love and the relationships with the animals. And there was one story in which a knight comes home from the war, knows his wife has had a baby, goes up to the nursery, walks in, it's covered with blood and the crib's upside down. And he sees his dog covered with blood, so he draws his sword and kills the dog. And then he picks the crib up, and there's his living son lying next to a dead wolf. And he realizes he's killed the dog who has saved his child's life. And that story always has me in tears. And the kids will look at me like, Dad, it's a story. What are you crying about? But it's about my past. Because one day I'm telling a friend about all these lectures I have to give, and I'm going, and she said, whoa, this is over the telephone. Why are you living this life? Because she's trying to get me to slow down. But when she said that, I said, my God. She said, what? I said, I immediately saw myself with a sword in my hand. Maybe that's why I'm a surgeon, to help people with a knife instead of killing them. And I'm not going to go into full detail because it gets too emotional. But all this happened to me spontaneously. I saw myself killing, chopping head off. And James Hillman, his name came up, Jungian therapist, and I went to see him. I said, I can't take this. He said, what? I said, my Lord says, go kill somebody. And he said, do you hear what you're saying? I said, what? The word Lord. I said, yeah, it's the Lord of the castle. He said, no, you have to go home and think about your Lord. And what I learned was about faith. Because why did I kill? Because when I said to my Lord, hey, well, why don't we kill her father instead of her? He said, hey, if you don't do what I ask, I'm going to kill you. I said, fine, I'll go kill her. And the ultimate answer was, if I'd had faith, I wouldn't have had to kill. Because when I relived it, what do I end up doing? I end up marrying the young woman. And then we had one family and nothing to fight over. And I may add, because I'm always asking, are you as smart as a fifth grader? I can hold a photograph of one of you up and put it up there. You could turn that off, by the way. I can put a photograph of one of you up there, and you can't tell who it's a picture of. What's it a picture of I'm showing? What would it be a picture of? Where are you all alike? What? Inside, yeah, our hearts. See, fifth graders would all be yelling that in 2 seconds. Because I know, I talk to them. We're all alike inside. Don't ever forget that. We are one family. Why are we different on the outside? So you don't feed people who aren't part of your family. And when your family comes home and says, where's dinner? You say, oh, I thought you were here before. All right? Consciousness also is non-local, and don't ever forget that, and you'll see it in drawings. We know the future, and I mean this literally. I'll show you some examples. And I think this is a part of why, when we talk about past lives, that I can be born with an experience that someone else has had. And again, I don't have time to go into details, but what convinces me is my friend Amelia sitting in California telling me where to find a lost animal in Connecticut. and describing in total detail our house, saying, I'm seeing through the cat's eyes. She said, I know it's not dead because I can see the moon. And the next day I went and picked it up. And I've talked to our animals too, say. When I adopt a pet who jumps out of my car and runs out into the street, the first day I stopped at a gas station, yeah, I come home and I say, why are you doing this? And he said, I belong to a couple. The man is an alcoholic. When the wife would say, take the dog for a walk, he'd put me in the car, go to the bar, drink, and abuse me. So I don't want to ever be in a car. And I can tell you, because yesterday I handed my wife a cane, and the dog immediately ran out of the room. I mean, he's been beaten. And I said to my wife, you see what I mean? All you do is pick up a stick or a broom, and he runs. So consciousness is not local. And if you want to improve the future, become a graduate student in terms of your consciousness and your ability to love, and the world will be better. Solzhenitsyn, in his book Cancer Ward, uses a wonderful term. See, he doesn't talk about spontaneous remissions. He doesn't talk about miracles. The men are sitting around the ward, and one of them says, because he's gone to the medical library and come back with this book, he said, hey, look, it says here there are cases of self-induced healing, not recovery through treatment, but actual healing, see? And it was as though self-induced healing flooded out of the great open book like a rainbow-colored butterfly for everyone to see. And they all held up their foreheads and cheeks for its healing touch as it flew past. Only the gloomy Padiev said with a hopeless, obstinate expression on his face, I suppose for that you need to have a clear conscience. Yeah, that's everything you need to know. See, not a spontaneous remission. How the hell do you have that? Well, how do you have a miracle? I don't know. But how do you have self-induced healing? What's the butterfly about? Transformation. What's the rainbow? All your emotions are in order. Okay? And the basic message that I keep repeating over and over again, and we'll get to it many times, is you need to be born again. Okay? Quote from Joseph Campbell. Birth, I forgot the word he uses, conquers death. Yeah, birth, only birth conquers death. But not the birth of that which has been lost, but the birth of something new. Okay? So we drop you in water, we pull you back out again, yeah. And keep finding and rebirthing yourself. And this gets to be scientific, you see. Whether it's with somebody like John or a whole host of other people, it's about you communicating with your body. It's a wonderful poem at the beginning of one of my books. Oh, and by the way, at intermission and other things, one of our sons is out there. If you want to get those things, he's happy to help you. You don't have to wait till the end of the day. But the poem is, a scab's a beautiful thing, a coin the body has minted with an invisible motto, in God we trust. Okay? Your body loves you. Do you ever stop and think about that? I operate on people. I don't give them a page and say, read this so you know how to heal. No, the body knows how to heal. I started a religion. The symbols of my religion are a penny, a Band-Aid, and ice. It's called undo. Why? Because a penny says liberty and in God we trust, and Abe Lincoln never smiles. Lighten up. What happened to Abe is going to happen to you. Why a Band-Aid? Because like a scab, cover the damn thing, don't look at it for a week, take the Band-Aid off and it'll be healed. Stop picking at it. And why ice? Because it defies the laws of physics. Freeze any liquid, it becomes dense and sinks. What does ice do? It floats. Because we wouldn't be alive if ice sank. Every bit of life in the ocean and every lake would be obliterated because they'd fill up with ice. Yeah, so believe me, our body loves us and so does our Creator, or these things wouldn't be built in. Now, what I want you to do, really, I'm always telling people to have role models. I mean, one of mine is WWLD, what would Lassie do? But behave like a bacteria or a virus if you want to get well. Because you dump antibiotics on bacteria, and what do? They make genetic changes and they survive. And the changes are not accidental. They happen rapidly. Why do you have to get a flu shot every year? Because the flu virus is damn smart. It keeps changing. See? So we have to try to keep up with it. Well, why can't we do that? Okay? When we're threatened? Because we have problems, like credit cards and families. See? Yeah. But if you could find that inner peace, there's a book, I think it's out there, called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. Why did I like it? Here's a geneticist, a pure scientist. I always said to people, genes are like light switches. They don't decide. You have to turn them on and off. He calls them blueprints, say. So twin sisters don't get the same disease the same day. Who's more likely to develop breast cancer? The good girl who internalizes anger and is busy making mommy and daddy happy. And then her sister, who's a little devil, driving everybody nuts, doing her thing. Hey, and they're identical twins. How come? Yeah, because what message is being given? And I'd say when you think about somebody like John and say, where does cancer go? Yes, he gave it a message. I love life. Again, fifth graders don't have the problems you have. See, when you say to fifth graders, what day of the week's bad for your health? They say Saturday and Sunday. And you say, what? Yeah, we get so tired running around doing things. Yeah, they're burning up. When do you have a problem? On Monday. More heart attacks, suicide, strokes, and illnesses. Why? Because you're burning out. So he who seeks to save his life will lose it. You become what everybody else wants, you've lost your life. And that's why 70% of high school students have considered suicide, and for homework will write 3 to 5 pages on why I ought to be dead, and 1 page, if you're lucky, on why I'm worth loving. Love your children. Statistics. Harvard students, did your parents love you? Think what your answer would be. Did your parents love you? Most of you will raise your hand or you wouldn't be here. I mean that. No, I'm serious. You care about yourself or you wouldn't show up here. Okay? So you look up these students 35 years later. Those who said my parents loved me, 1 out of 4 had suffered a major illness. Those who said they didn't, 98% had. So remember, stupidity is not why people are self-destructive. They don't have inspiration. Reparent everybody. Give people love. I didn't say you had to like them. Martin Luther King Jr. said, it's a good thing Jesus told us to love one another, not like one another, because there are some people I don't like, okay? I grew up with parents who loved me. I did well in school, and my grandfather was my religious teacher, so I didn't have trouble with God. I'm in a minority, and it got me in a lot of trouble. Because I didn't realize what other people were experiencing. So when I would ask at a workshop, what mottos do you live by? Hand goes up. He didn't ask us what mottos we're dying by. Yeah. And if I get time, I'll read you some of those letters. See, when your parents tell you you're an embarrassment, you don't amount to anything, and only dress you in black, brown, and navy, so nobody will notice you. And I don't make up these stories. Say, when did she buy a red dress? When she had cancer the second time. Okay? And I have to tell you, she was sitting in the front row and her red dress was giving me a headache. But when I read a letter she sent me, because it was iridescent, and just, I couldn't understand how her husband let her out of the house. But when she gave me this letter telling, quote, my mother's words were eating away at me and maybe gave me cancer, and how she had to have cancer to get bright colors, you know, I forgave her immediately. But understand, give your children and yourself models to live by. Say, what should I do, Ma? Do what'll make you happy. Listen to your heart. Get out of your head. Okay? Norman Vincent Peale's mother. Norman, if God slams one door, further down the corridor, another will be opened. What drove me nuts? Come home from school. You really upset? I had a terrible day. And my mother would look at me and say, it was meant to be. God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. I mean, I really thought, you don't want to help me? Okay. And I would talk to God in my room with the door shut so they wouldn't send me to a psychiatrist. And my father's father died when he was a youngster. And he said it was one of the best things that ever happened. I said, how could you say that? He said, I learned what was important about life, right? And that money is to help make life easier for people. So you grow up with parents like that, you have a very different experience. And I don't know why it popped into my head at this point, but think about this. See, when you want to contribute love to the world, you're all put in a concentration camp. And you're told, if you can't work, bullet through the head or starvation. And a physician wrote about his experience. He said, I've got diabetics, people with heart disease, all kinds of problems, and we're thrown into a concentration camp. And he could not believe what happened. He said, because when they had a will to live, because he said there were no benefits for anybody, so being ill was of no benefit. You didn't get attention. He said the mind realized if it was occupied by illness, what it meant. You ended up in the infirmary, you were dead. And he couldn't believe how healthy these people became and how they survived. So yeah, that will to live is a powerful force and communicates with your genes. And again, it's not see, the part I always worry about is, then if I don't love enough and if I don't get better, then I did it wrong. That's the guilt, shame, and blame. See, that comes from your parents, your teachers, and your clergy, and sometimes your doctors too. That if you do it wrong, so I'm afraid. Yeah, I will show you drawings where I say to somebody, draw a picture. I had my 10-year-old son do this. I'm not good at drawing. You're trying to get over cancer and you're worried about your grade in art, say. Or Billy, what's the minister? Billy Graham. Somebody wrote to him and says, God want me to have cancer. Now, I know what my first words would be. No. The first words in his letter back to this person were, not necessarily. And he went on to say, God might give you cancer, makes you more spiritual. Not my God. So my comment to Billy Graham is, if you lose your car keys, do you walk home? If he says no, then he's not living the message. Say. If he says, I'm going to look for my car keys, then I would say, then do what Maimonides said. If you lose your health, go look for it. Because the Bible says, if you find what your neighbor lost, return it to him. So if somebody loses their health, I try to return it to them. And if they lose their car keys, I look for that too. See if I can find a poem I wrote. But after taking the dogs for a walk, I was impressed by water. And here's the first line, why I was impressed by it. Nicodemus comes up to Jesus and says, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? Jesus answered, verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. And I thought, where's he coming from? But I was impressed by water, so the words jumped off the page at me. Why didn't he say your earth? Adam wasn't made out of water. And then this came out of me. You can look into a mirror and see your image. Water reflects your image too. But unlike a mirror, you must get close to the water and yourself to see the reflection. And just as water may exist as a liquid, solid, or vapor, you can undergo continual transformation too, depending on your state of consciousness. You can choose to close your heart and become hard and cold as ice, or become sparkling diamonds on the branches of the tree of life, or protect and guard the life which exists beneath the surface. For it is only when we are willing to go beneath the surface into the stillness and depth of our being that we truly find ourselves and create the authentic path our stream should follow. As a stream of water flows over and around stones, making beautiful sounds, your bloodstream can flow over obstacles, become as destructive as a tsunami, or choose to vaporize and rise above life's difficulties, ready to fall back when needed as gentle rain, softening the soil of life. One day, every bloodstream will find its way to the endless sea of life, where you will be reborn as white crystals, which descend slowly and gently onto the frozen ground when the world experiences a drought of love, forming a blank canvas upon which the world can now create a work of art. And then this came out of the Tao. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice. And I think what I would say to all of you is look for those kinds of common themes. And if you see, in other words, what do I mean by common theme? I mean, if you went to a support group for cancer and they told you things, then you talk to a United States Marine and they tell you things, then you talk to a kid who's had cancer or an alcoholic and you hear similar themes, say, then that must work. Say, because if I talk about being born again, go to an AA meeting, they'll say, fake it till you make it. Okay? Because if I put you on the stage and give you a tragedy to play, remember you're only acting, immune function goes down, stress hormone levels go up. Put you in a comedy, you don't have a problem. Okay? Now, what study was done by American Psychosomatic Society? Cancer patients who laugh live longer. Okay? Now, if I said that 30 years ago, they'd say, that's crazy. What does laughter have to do with anything? Try this tomorrow. Every 4 hours, laugh. It has nothing to do with anything funny. Just laugh. Watch the effect it has on you and the people around you. They'll start laughing too, even though you're already doing it, even though they have no idea what the hell you're laughing at. Also, I got to say one more thing. I mean, there's so much fun. Why do we sleep? Do you ever think of how dangerous it is? No, I mean, think of it from our evolution, okay? You're sleeping in a cave, in comes a tiger, you're finished, say. So why the hell do we sleep? And most animals don't, or sleep for very short times. Even horses sleep on their feet, ready to run if something happened. And my sense is that it's to gain the knowledge, because consciousness, your body, the wisdom can only speak through images. It can't talk to you. So you go to sleep, then the wisdom comes. Even the biblical line, God speaks in dreams and images in Job. So yes, pay attention to your dreams and images, and I will show you some drawings. But it's also, the importance is, I think, to get into that, is to really understand that we have to accept our mortality and then enjoy our lifetime. And there's a wonderful line from Woody Allen. One guy's totally depressed. I don't have time to read you what he said, but the other guy says, what are you doing Saturday night? He says, I'm committing suicide. And the other fellow says, how about Friday night? And I always recommend the movie Harold and Maude, which is a very similar message. So, enjoy the moment and live in the moment. Animals and children always do. As a matter of fact, Keith, who's out there with the books, when he was 7 years old, said, my leg hurt, take a hot bath. After several weeks, he said, I need an x-ray. I said, you're 7, what the hell do you know about x-rays? We take an x-ray, he's got a bone tumor. Odds are, it's a malignant tumor, he'll be dead in a year. I probably have even reduced the chance of his surviving because I told him to take a bath, and a lot of guilt. And I came home totally depressed and tried to get across to my wife and our 5 kids that he's going to be dead in a year, so everybody be appropriately depressed and go to your room. Well, see, I'm the doctor. I know what's going to happen. The next morning, Keith came in. I'm sitting at my desk, and he says, Dad, can I talk to you for a minute? Yes, what is it? You're handling this poorly. I never forget that moment. I can just picture him. He said, we're trying to go out and play and have a nice day, and you want us depressed in our room. Okay? Yeah, we had a dog named Oscar. He had extensive malignant melanoma. I hadn't planned to tell this story, but, I mean, it's just how the kids taught me. Okay? The vet says, I've never seen a dog this sick recover. He needs to be euthanized. I said, well, don't do it until I tell the children. I go home, I say, we're going to put Oscar to sleep. No. Why not? You don't put your patients to sleep. So I brought Oscar home, and I did what I prescribed. I loved the hell out of him, massaged him. When I took my vitamins, he got some of mine. I fed him with a spoon, and lo and behold, in a week, he's out the door running around and lived for years, and did not die of cancer. And I thought, the kids are teaching me what I'm trying to teach others. So I'd say, again, live like that. Another, how do you die laughing? It's a wonderful story. Hindu story. A man is out in the woods, cuts up a tree. Next morning, he makes a shelter. A demon says to him, "You cut up my sacred tree, I'm going to cut your heart out and eat it." He says, whoa, is there anything else I can give you? Bring me a child from your family who's willing to take your place. I'll have the child's heart instead of yours. So the guy goes home. I said, let's share it with your family. We do. He said, nothing's going to work. I said, tell him. Let's see what happens. One kid jumps up, little 7-year-old, says, "Oh, I'll take his place." His parents say, "Shh." He said, no, shush. I want to take his place. And my question always is, what did he say to his parents so they'll agree? And what he said was, sooner or later my body will perish at any rate. But if it perishes without love, which the wise declare is the only thing of permanence, of what use would have been? And what greater merit can my body reap than the love of this act? Next Sunday we show up. Parents are holding the boy. My friend is handed the sword. He raises it and the boy bursts into joyful laughter. And that's where the story ends and says, why did the boy laugh? Yeah. And what was his last prayer? Tells you why. Let me be born again and again on the wheel of rebirth. So again and again I may offer this body for the benefit of others. Say, the Son of Man comes not to be served, but to serve, and to ransom his life for the good of the many. Now that's where faith becomes important. Say, you want to live forever, love somebody. But why do I talk about faith too? I mean, Jesus could walk on water. So why didn't he jump off the cross and impress everybody? Imagine this. He's nailed to the cross. He jumps down and says, "Okay, do you get it now, who I am?" And, I'm not making fun, okay? Or Abraham. I mean, God, see, if you say this in high school, all the kids say, yeah, my parents would agree. But God comes to Abraham and says, want you to sacrifice your son? And Abraham doesn't argue like I did with my Lord. Hey, why don't you take me? Leave the kid alone. Because he knows that he's going to accomplish a greater good, and I think he knew he's not going to lose his life. Why do I say that? Because Abraham turns to his, assistants and says, we're going to walk up there, but we'll be back in a little while. He doesn't say, I'll be back if you're going to kill your kid. He says, we'll be back. And they do come back. And the angel is there. So I'd say again, look at your life. You want to die laughing? Yeah. Know that you've accomplished what you came here to accomplish. And it isn't about how long. I meet kids literally who are 7 years old who do more with their life. One boy who was dying said to me, why am I different? He meant there were kids playing in the street and he's dying in the hospital. I said, because it makes you beautiful. And he broke out into a big smile. And I may add, I didn't decide to say those words because I hear things. I hear voices, and I also am used at times to say things that I don't decide. And again, I have to give you a specific example. My father is tired of his body, said to my mother, I need to get out of here. My mother calls me, says, he doesn't like the hospital bed we have. I said, Mom, he's talking to you about his body, not the hospital bed. So she went in and gave him permission to leave. And one of our sons called me, said, Grandpa's dying today, come on down. So I go out running. See, and you might say, why don't you get in your car? Your father's dying. No, I need my time. I go out, and a voice said to me, how did your parents meet? I said, I don't know. The voice said, fine, then ask your mother when you get to the hospital. When I walk into the hospital room, I said to my mother, say, no greeting. I've been told what to do. I walked in, I said, how did you two meet? She said, I was on vacation on the beach, sitting with girls I didn't know who I learned had a terrible reputation. And coming down the beach were a bunch of boys. One of them was your father. And they tossed coins, and your father lost and got me. And she went on with more stories, one disaster after another. My father died laughing. He looked wonderful when he died. See, the other thing about consciousness, grandchildren and great-grandchildren are coming from all over the country. He cannot know, because he's in a coma, who's coming. But when the last child walked in and was announced, he took his last breath and died. with a big smile. And don't ever forget, when I say, if he's in a coma, you'd say, how does he hear you? We hear under anesthesia, asleep, and in coma. So don't forget that. Let me tell you one more story, then I'll show you a slide, because I can go on all day and night. My mother had connections. That's why now I'm on the board of directors of Heaven as a consultant. But, and maybe I should share this with you, because if you said, why didn't God make a perfect world? The answer is, number one, you're not prepared for perfection. If this were a perfect world, in 2 weeks you'd all be complaining. I mean it. You know, nothing happens. All the street corners are backed up because everybody's yelling, I love you, you go first. And I'm serious when I say this to you. Make this a world of love. Because as God said, a perfect world is not creation, it's a magic trick. But when you create a world of love and perfection, it's not a magic trick, it's through your work. And what a different world it is. And the other is, why doesn't God answer everybody's prayers? And God's statement is, look, when a woman goes into labor in her 4th month, yeah, the doctors step in, and I step in too. If they're not capable of rebirthing themselves, of changing, I come in to help out. But then there's some people who are in their 9th month, so we hasten the process. It's time that they rebirth themselves. So there are times that you need to make the change. And it's not up to somebody else to say, okay, I'll fix everything for you. It's time for you to do something. And don't wait for a disaster. As Hemingway said, the world breaks everyone. Some of us become strong at the broken places. Learn from those who have preceded you, the wisdom of the ages. A quote from somebody. A lot of things I was handed this morning, not an accident. It's a mystic named Osho. He speaks of the search for harmony and wholeness that lies at the core of all religious and spiritual traditions, illuminating the essence of Christianity, Hasidism, Buddhism, Sufism, Tantra, Tao, Yoga, Zen. Yeah, it's the same message over and over again. So learn it. But anyway, the angel of death and I work together. If I walk into a room and the angel's at the foot of the bed, the person was going to die. If the angel's at the head of the bed, they're going to live. So I could, take credit. As the angel said, hey, you want to say you're a wonderful doctor, you're going to save them, go ahead. But also help people prepare if they're going to lose a loved one. And I did. And then one day, I operated on a little boy for cancer, and I'm walking down the hall of the hospital, and I go into his room, and the angel's standing at the foot of the bed. What would you do? You turn the bed around. So I flipped the bed around. The angel said, that's the first time you've ever done anything, so I'm not going to punish you, but come with me. And we went up to heaven, and the angel said, I'm going to have all the children who died this year march by with a beautiful candle I want you to watch. And I'm watching the parade, and I see a kid with a dark candle. So I said, oh, there's a kid coming with a dark candle. And I run up, and it was a little boy I had operated on. I said, hey, I'm here to light your candle. And he said, they do, but your tears keep putting it out. And that's what taught me to not be overwhelmed by grief. It doesn't mean I don't grieve, okay? But I don't let it take over my life. Then the angel said, come here, I got to show you something else. He said, these candles that they're carrying never burn out. As long as they remain up here, they continue on. But when they're ready for a new life, we put our candle in this room. And I look at this, millions and millions of candles. I mean, some were 6 feet high, some were 2 inches high. I said, oh, the big ones are kids and the little ones are old people? He said, no. Some of the little ones are kids and some of the big ones are old people. It's not about their age. It's about how long they have here. And I would say to all of you, don't forget to make sure your candle burns up and not out before your time, but to use that life and use it completely. Now, let me read you one other little thing that came from a teacher in Buddhist that was, like Thought for the Day from Blue Mountain, Eknath Easwaran. This spring, I watched 6 baby swallows learn how to fly. They were sitting on telephone wires observing their mother. They came slowly flying by, doing easy turns. These baby swallows didn't have to read books or attend lectures on how to fly. It's inborn instinct. Learning to fly may not be easy, but it's what the birds know how to do. The Lord sees us sitting on a perch made of pleasure, profit, power, prestige, quaking with every variation in our bank account and every critical comment that comes our way. And he asks us if we would not rather forget our failings and learn to fly. This is what we are born to do, to leave our perch of self and interests and soar aloft. To soar to union with God means that all the faculties and resources which have been hidden in us can come into our lives to the great benefit of those around us. And it's that message over and over again. And I'd say again, let that happen. But don't let others impose a life on you. What I mean by that is you choose how to love the world. And don't make it a war when you run into an illness. Because as Mother Teresa said, I'm not going to an anti-war rally, but if you ever have a peace rally, call me. Because when you fight a war, you empower the enemy. Also, don't try to not die. The bitterest people in heaven are the vegetarian meditating joggers, okay? Do things to enhance the quality of your life. Would you rather be blind or deaf? Except for musicians, most people choose deafness. But as Helen Keller said, deafness is darker by far than blindness. What separates you from few people if you don't hear? So how do you help others? Don't tell them what to do. If you haven't lived what they've lived, you're a tourist. Don't tell the natives. Listen to them. They will then thank you. And I mean this. I mean, I've had times where I've listened to our kids for half an hour and just gone, They say, oh, you're such a help. Because they now know themselves. The other was when I mentioned the snow and the white. Think of, they got a picture there, but think of the blank canvas, the white, okay? And a woman said, we're a work in progress. So it's not about failing. You're a work of art. And as she finished it starts with seeing myself in the mirror. It's not as though I lost my breast to surgery. They seem and said they've been erased or painted over. But she finishes with, do we perhaps shed things as we go through life that other features may be enhanced? The canvas is not finished. There's more color on the palette. And always see life as a labor pain. But you choose your pain, not someone else. And again, a poem about 9 months seems like a long time. I watch my body change. It ends with 9 months pass, I give birth to my child. All the discomfort and pain is now justified. See, chemotherapy and radiation, 12 months seems like a long time. I watch my body change. 12 months pass, I give birth to myself. So remember, that's what it's like. And one more thing before the slides. Don't let the child in you die. You must have a sense of humor to survive, okay? I am a multiple personality. I don't have time to tell you all the bizarre things I do in our community, okay? But I will tell you the benefits. Your children do not eat out with you. Why? Because when you go to a Chinese restaurant, you order Italian food. And when the waitress says, how's everything? You say, what the hell are you upsetting me for? Did you read the paper? Why do you ask me, how's everything? Why don't you just talk about the food? And the kids look at you like, you want to go out to dinner? No. We'll have what's in the refrigerator. So I saved a lot of money. But I also help people find humor, because I walk into a place where we order pizzas, and guess what they had on the counter for me? Yes, 4 containers of Chinese food. Because I always walk in and say, is my Chinese food ready? And the waitresses look at me like, I think you're in the wrong restaurant, sir. The owner knows me. So he had Chinese food waiting for me, and the whole restaurant was laughing. And yeah, he got me, okay? But, you bring out, or just one more thing. Go in, when you see a sign that says, nobody allowed here, walk in. And the guards start yelling, where are you? I said, I'm a nobody. And most of them let you go knowing you're retarded. But one of them came over to me, put his finger on my chest, and this is a guy about 6'3", and I thought, I made a mistake today. No, I didn't. He put his finger on my chest. He said, I'm making you somebody. You have to go now. If bilateral mastectomies can't be fun, they're not worth having. I feel I must make a clean breast of it and say that life has given me the booby prize. I know this time my tit is really in the ringer and I feel like such a boob. Depression dwells deep in my bosom as I sit here like a lump and stare uncaring at the flickering boob tube. My life feels like a big bust. It's hard to keep abreast of what's happening around me. Inside I feel as cold as a witch's tit, and I know my career plans to be a waitress at Hooters are definitely foiled. Let's face it, I'm not just broke, I'm flat busted. Thanks for listening. It felt good to get that off my chest. To me, that's survival behavior, you know? And again, things it's hard to have time to talk about, but if you go to the hospital, you want to be a character. See, then they don't make mistakes. Because it's one of the top 10 causes of death is going to the hospital because of medical errors. But if you're a character, you see, you're not room 422 or the colon cancer, you're the screwball, say, or you're Bernie, or you're whatever. So, and when you go to the hospital, make sure you put your baby pictures up. So when they come in the room and say, who's the cute kid? Me. All right. Can we have the slides, please? Now, again, all these people get the same instructions. Draw a picture of yourself. Me and my backache. But what happens if I cure her backache? Who is she then? So be prepared to be well, okay? Don't identify by your illness and use it to get attention. Next. Or do I have a control? I don't know. I don't know what this is. I don't know. Yeah, I might have turned it off. But who's in charge? God. Pardon? Bottom button? Okay. All right. Okay. No, I have to tell you, when I talk God, I was in this situation, and it was so bright it's hard to see the slide. So I said, God, I need clouds. And we had a thunderstorm that was incredible. And everybody was totally enraged at me because they got soaking wet going back to their car. Okay. Now, remember, the instructions are draw a picture. Look what a male engineer does, you see. And why men do not survive their statistics as well as women. But again, it's relationships and connections. Don't just be mama, okay, all you ladies, because if the kids leave home, then it's okay for you to die. You want to be an authentic self, okay? But what you see with the men is it can't work. What's the point of living? So have your connections. Now, this is the guilt issue. See, at the bottom it says, I had my son Bobby, 10 years old, do this because I'm not good at drawing. You're a divine child. When you get to heaven, you'll be on the admission line. When you get to the head of the line, they say, how do you want to be introduced? Don't start in with, I'm a mother, I'm a plumber, just say to God, it's you. Or your child. And God says, come on in. And the best answer I ever heard was from a kid who said, tell God his replacement is here. Again, draw yourself. Why'd you put your child in? He's a part of me. Why is your right arm longer than your left? His arm's out of the picture. Remember, this is the night before surgery. Oh, we're reaching for my husband. He's never there when you need him. Then what the hell is the smile about, see? When people in my community say to me, how are you? They get an answer, okay? I don't say fine. I don't even say good morning. I just say morning when I pass people because I'm not going to cover up. Okay? So when they say to me, how are you? I ask them, are you prepared for an answer? But understand this, we're all wounded. We are all wounded. Wait a minute, let me see if I have that here. I don't know what I did with it. Because usually, here it is. What am I holding in my hand? Yeah, the healthy answer, a piece of paper. See, this is your life. We're all wounded. But if all you ever do is focus on your wound, you're in big trouble. And know you can take charcoal and under pressure, it becomes a diamond. Say, why did I fold the piece of paper? Because again, as one of our kids said to me, what are you doing? I said, everybody's got troubles. It's a spiritual journey. He said, fine, call your next book, Holy Shit. And basically that's life. But what you do with the compost. But you want more compassion, Put a bandage over your eye and go out shopping or go to work on Monday with a bandage. The people you have known for years will tell you things about themselves they have never told you before, because now you have a visible wound. Don't hide your wounds. Your kids. Dr. Siegel, operate on me. The kids are teasing me in the locker room and gym. Draw a picture of yourself in the operating room. Remember, everybody's handed a full box of crayons. He's an insect on the operating table. Okay? That's not funny. I mean, he could have 112 operations, but he's never going to feel beautiful. I said to his parents, what he needs is your love, not more operations. Now, see, when a kid is loved, when he handed me this picture, I said, you don't have legs, so are you stuck? He said, turn the page over. Hey, that's what you want. You don't fit on one page. But you go to work and it's a prison. How do you think that's going to affect your colitis? I always ask, why was this young woman admitted to the hospital? What's her condition? What do you think? What would be the opposite? She was anorectic, starving to death, admitted to be force-fed. And that's why you have to understand it's people's self-image, say. What she sees when she looks in the mirror is not what you see when you look at her. So learn to understand people. And again, why would somebody fold the page? Because inside is this headless, handless person. And you can predict what diseases people will get from their drawings. If you don't have hands and I look you up 35 years later, you're more likely to have emotional problems. Why? Because how do you get a grip on things? How do you reach out? And if you walk around like this, you're more likely to have a heart attack because you're totally open and vulnerable to everybody. Ah, yes. If you have an affliction, I mean, some of this is cut off just by the size, but her full face is there. If you have a problem, think right now, if I said to you, what are you experiencing? What words you tell me? If you had a migraine headache, if you have cancer, if you have AIDS, what words would you use so we know what you're going through? After you say that, ask yourself, how do those words fit my life? When this woman came into my office, sent by her plastic surgeon, he removed a malignant melanoma and she's screaming at him, you made me ugly. He said, this is ridiculous. The scar's on her upper thigh, nobody even knows it's there. So something's going on, talk to her. I said, how would you describe the experience? Failure. I said, how does that fit your life? Well, my body failed. I said, your life is my question. She said, oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a child. I must have been a failure as a child. See, now we're back to healing her life. And you look at how rigid and masculine this lady is. Why? Hey, if I get to know anybody, I'll get hurt again. And yeah, who put that lady in a box? Remember, they're given a blank piece of paper. Her mother. You could fill every box with something her mother said. Okay? Oh yes, when you work with the elderly, you say, draw yourself now and what you were like 25 years ago. And 99% of the time you get two pictures. I'm fat and bald. I was slim and happy. But I have to add, I was thinking of this last night, in countries where people regularly live to be 100, you wouldn't get those two pictures because they still feel worthy. See? And then Bill hands me one picture. I said, Bill, I asked for two pictures. He said, yep, that's me then and that's me now. And Bill died a number of years ago because I was working with people, and I still do, in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And hanging on the wall is his picture. Okay? Because he had such an effect on everybody there. Draw your home. This looks like Minnesota in February, okay? But it says at the bottom, my dream house. No, it's not. She has a husband who's an alcoholic smoker. She has cancer. And they have a daughter. And those are the three trees. And she's hooked to him with the emotional colors, the black, which is grief, and the red, which can be love, but in her case, it's more about her pain. And as I say, she can't breathe in the house, and he's had accidents bringing her to the therapy group. The only people I know who said when we hit the toll booth really hit it. Again, how the pictures help. The child on your left has cancer. And she said, I don't get enough time for my family. Now, instead of talking to 6 people about what they're doing all day, I said, draw me a picture. And the parent's arms are not available. The seat on the sofa is empty. And the parent said, thank you. And the other thing I knew from this picture, she drew herself in purple. That's a spiritual color, that she was going to die of cancer. So I could help the parents get ready. Now, that doesn't mean if you drew a picture of yourself in purple that you're dying. No, you could be a spiritual human being, but it has a lot to do with what she was going through. This is what you'd like your family to be like. It's a family circle. Mama and the oldest daughter are touching everybody. There's communication. But you, again, go into the 5th grade, 4th grade, it doesn't matter. You say, draw your home and family. About 10% of the pictures look like a family. Usually everybody's all over the damn place. The teachers always say to me, how the hell do you know so much from a picture? Yeah, the kids are telling me what's going on at home. And will the real me please stand up? Don't wait for a disaster to start doing what makes you happy. You know, and again, I see this. I have 2 months to live. I'm moving to Colorado. I have 2 months to live. I'm moving to Florida. I have 2 months to live. I'm taking my tie off. Yeah. Now, they don't die in 2 months. I mean, the guy who moved to Colorado, I called because I wasn't invited to the funeral, and he answered the phone. He said, it's so beautiful here, I forgot to die. So, but I know people in Colorado who need to move to Florida, okay? But do what makes you happy. And don't wait for a disaster. And what your parents do to you. On the left is mama, the right is the daughter. 8 years apart they drew these pictures. They don't know what each one drew, but look how identical they are. So if you have a parent who doesn't have a head, arms, or legs, how the hell do you deal with difficulties? See, life is not unfair. I mean, if I said to all of you, is life fair, you'd all yell, no. I'd say, it's obviously fair, you're all complaining. It's difficult. Teach the kids how to deal with difficulties. And phone call one day. Dr. Siegel, this is a lot of years ago. Do you have Jack Kevorkian's phone number? Because I'd like to be dead. Why? I have a brain tumor and my father sexually abused me. I said, Becky, I love you. You're a child of God. Send me a picture. I said, you don't have a face, Becky. Yeah, I'm nobody. That tree is her life, and the black is when her father abused her. But when I said, why all the spots on your face? She said, that's how many times he did it. Becky is alive and well today, and I've become her father. Now, I was just sharing with somebody what a suicidal kid said to me one day. Well, you're my CD. I said, huh? I'm a CD? Yeah, you're my chosen dad. You want to save lives? Go up to people and let them know I love you. And I'll be your chosen dad or CM, your chosen mom. And you become family. I mean, it's always hard for me to stop telling stories, okay? I give this kind of lecture at a school. A kid calls me up and says, you said in survival behavior, if somebody asks you to do something, you don't want to do it, you can say no. So I'm calling you to ask you to pay my tuition. Now, when a kid's it's a young woman, has that kind of guts, I said, okay, but you have to become our daughter. She said, okay. And Amity called me and said, you know, I've graduated from nursing school. I've got a job now. I can pay you back. Or we can start a scholarship for other kids. I said, yeah, you go ahead and start the scholarship. And that's the gift that you get, as well as meals that she's cooked for us, too. And is your life stored in you? See, look at the size of that head. Okay, this is an intellectual reporter who shows up in my office. I think, this is not going to be pleasant. So I said to her, you know, I'm with patients. Why don't you draw a picture? She brings it in, and to disturb her, I said, what happened when you were 12 years old? I said, I don't like deadlines, she said. I said, there's only one hand on the clock. What happened? And she burst into tears and told me. Hey. Now, a safer statement would have been, why is 12 important to you? Because she could have said 12 months ago something happened. But I wanted to shake her up, and it is. And why does somebody draw a hospital room with 4 windows and a cloud over one and 3 pretty things and the number 2? Because look at her family picture. How many drinks are on the tray? 2. Any for her? No. It's for her brother and her father. So I can tell you, your life is stored in you, but you can abandon your past and you can heal it. and about not killing. This is drawn by a Quaker who was told by a doctor, I'm going to kill your cancer. He said, I'm a Quaker, I'm a conscientious objector, I don't kill anything. And he walked out of the office. Not to die, but to live 12 more years doing his thing. But he so gently carries his cancer cells away. And again, so you can have an oat cell cancer and you have mares and O's eating your oats. So you don't have to have a war. And again, when a child is loved, they draw the operating room as a beautiful place because I'm coming here to be helped and healed. Okay? And he's got a spiritual mother. And the kids who aren't loved, yeah, I can tell you that operating room is all red and black. And again, I hate you. Who do you hate? Cancer? No, the cancer's crying and saying, help me. I hate the doctor. They made me bald, ugly, and horrible. That's why you have to empower yourself. It has to be your labor pain. So don't do things to not die. Do them to enhance the quality of your life. And why I show you these pictures, because you could say, I'm getting chemotherapy. Well, if the devil's giving you poison, you're in big trouble. You're going to have more side effects than anybody. And how powerful is the mind? Radiation, well, I'll show you, remind me when I get to radiation therapy. Here's somebody wondering, why am I having trouble with chemotherapy? Well, it's hell, look at it. Okay? And somebody else says, I don't want it, and I say, go get it, because it's yellow energy flowing to your tumor. And somebody else says, that's me getting a bone marrow transplant. And somebody else says, that's me getting a bone marrow transplant. I'm in God's hands, doctors touching me, look at the beauty. Is the survival rate different? Yes. And again, radiation is a monster chasing me with no nose. Okay? How does God breathe life into Adam? Through his nostrils. I'm a skeleton in a coffin. This boy who drew this vomits at red street lights because a red light goes on when you get therapy. And here's God giving somebody else radiation with a purple beam. Now, I've had patients have radiation and get called by the radiation therapist to say, I saw your name in the chart, so I know our machine isn't broken. It's one of your crazy patients. He said she has absolutely no reaction to radiation. And I said to her, how do you manage? She said, I get out of the way and let it go to my tumor. Okay? That's quantum physics. Desire and intention alter the physical world. Now, I also know from a radiation therapist who said to me, we had our machine repaired. The people didn't put the radioactive cobalt back in. We didn't realize it for a month. I said, do you have any idea what you're telling me? He said, what am I telling you? I said, you'd have to be an idiot to not know the machine isn't working. So you had tumor shrink, you had people develop red skin, and he said, oh my God, you're right. I said, yeah, go pull the records and write an article. Whether he did or not, I don't know. But that's how powerful your mind is, related to all kinds of treatments. And again, an operating room, you could be where nobody gives a damn, or you can be in a place where God and love, and you can wake up and have no pain after major surgery. And I show you all this so you understand you can program yourself. Here's a lady who says, that's me in the operating room. You're in a black box with only 2 legs supporting you. It's a mess. There's nobody there. Who cares? But what if you go home and visualize surgery 4 or 5 times a day, successful, going home doing well? Look at the picture she draws a week later. Say, everybody's in the same color, a wonderful team. What do you get a kick out of? The anesthesiologist still doesn't reach the floor, so there's some issues there. But there's God, doctors. I also have to say her husband has some sexual problems. If you notice, he has no endowment. So these are a lot of issues you can discuss with people. They're not accidents. And again, what part of the body are we having a problem with in this person? Yeah, her breasts, right. See, medical students are not told Carl Jung interpreted a dream, made a physical diagnosis. I see it in drawings all the time. Yeah, in the emergency room, I would hand everybody, while we're waiting for the test, say, draw a picture. And made a lot of decisions based, well, an example, one boy had severe abdominal pain, what we call board-like abdomen. It's so hard you can't even touch it. It's in such pain. And everybody's yelling, operate, operate. I said, no, draw a picture. And he drew his abdomen as green. That's a healthy, natural color. So I said, we're going to watch him. And everybody's telling me, you're crazy. Well, it turns out, once he got to know me, he said, you know, I'm a drug addict. And he was having a drug reaction. It had nothing to do with the need for surgery. And the drawing saved him an operation. Now, I don't know if you can see, but the end of every branch on this tree ends flat. And when the lady came in and said, I don't know whether to have a mastectomy or a lumpectomy, I have breast cancer, and I know you like pictures, I said, every branch on this tree has been pruned. She said, thank you, I'll have a mastectomy. This was like her inner wisdom. Okay, it's not me telling her what to do. A boy with a brain tumor drew this, and you look at how like a brain that tree is, if you drew a line around it. And which is hard for you to see, but there's a black line in it. So I knew his cancer had come back before a CAT scan showed anything, and I could help him get ready. And again, this is a test question. This is before, the boy said. This is like after. What operation did he have? Before and after. If you want to get medical credits, you're going to have to answer. This is uncircumcised. And that's circumcised, okay? And this is another boy with a brain tumor. Now, he hands it to me and says chocolate syrup on a strawberry cone, but that's exactly what his tumor looks like. And just so you know, in our family, my wife was doodling this while I was working with people, getting them to draw pictures. And I've told you we have 5 children. You can see one of them's out of line. But what was interesting, I was trying to convince this one to go off to school. It's called non-directive therapy. One night, we dismantled his bed and hid it. And that's why the kids are wonderful. He goes into his bedroom and closes the door. He doesn't say a damn thing. We're all waiting for a reaction. The next morning, he came to the breakfast table. He said, thank you, my back feels much better. So I never recommend non-directive therapy anymore. But when I looked at this picture, 2 of our kids were away at school and 3 were home. But you see now the picture, instead of showing 5 and 2, is 4 and 3. And there were 6 cattails. And 6 weeks from the day of this drawing, he left to join his brother and go to school in Denver. But when I saw that picture, I knew he decided. Now, I don't know if it's going to be 6 days or 6 years. And this was my picture for Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And this is what impressed me and started me on that. That's my inner guy, George, sitting next to me. And others have seen him standing around me. I don't have time to tell you those pictures, but people have come up to me and drawn pictures of him because they saw him standing in front of me. But 2 things. Elizabeth said, why 12 trees? I said, I've been doing this work for 12 months. What are you hiding? What are you covering up? I said, what are you talking about? You put snow on the mountain. I said, yeah, it's snow, it's a mountain. She said, no, the page is white. You took a white crayon and made another layer. And then I dealt with all my feelings. And I realized how much was in there. And again, is the future shown? Have to make a long story short. But this was a neighbor of mine, headed downhill because of divorce, 4 rays of sunshine to her kids. She attempted suicide shortly after this picture. One of the kids, see again, intuitive. The school bus pulls up, he says, I have to go home. Runs home, saved his mother's life. The your lower right is the near future. She woke up in the intensive care unit with 8 members of her family. Mad as hell at her for what she did. She grew up in a house on the beach and the black clouds in the future. And when people get ready to die, this is drawn by a 4-year-old, purple balloon, her name's in it, draped in black. What did we learn? Because I told her mother, take her home. I said, I don't know what the decorations are. The colorful dots were the days left in her life. Amber woke up on her mother's birthday, said, Mom, I'm dying today as a gift to you to free you from all the trouble. And a nurse friend who was a dog trainer drew a purple kite. I said, your husband isn't ready to let go. We need to talk to him. So he came in and he said, if you die, I don't know how to take care of myself. I'll die too. She said, I'll train you. I won't die. She spent 6 months, which I'm sure were those colorful trees. And he said, I cut the string. She said, fine, I'll die Thursday when the kids get here. And did. And somebody who worked with me made this card, all in purple with that butterfly in the upper left. 2 weeks after she made the card, she died. And I realized she was telling me the same thing in the card. And do we know the future? 2 lights, black knobs, blue sheet, white sheet. Now, a child is sitting in the waiting room, has never been in the operating room. 2 yellow lights, black knobs, blue, white, her figure, and 4 little figures. And that's the surgeon, anesthesiologist, and 2 nurses. And again, what is healing? This is a friend of mine, Sue Ann, with athetoid cerebral palsy. I thought the house had been robbed when I saw this because she's all tied up. She said, no, I'm typing my autobiography with my nose. That way I don't drool and crash into the computer. So who's healed? See? Or you become a mouth painter. But you don't give a quadriplegic a sermon, okay? You get him into a room full of quadriplegics. And again, what does your love do? There's a paraplegic doctor who's a friend of mine. But when somebody comes along who loves you, you feel whole again. And the animals know that too. The sad part about medicine is I'm depressed, I can't cope, I go to my doctor, you got to help me, I get an antidepressant. No, we need to talk to each other. You got to say, why are you depressed? Oh, your family was killed in an accident? I got them to cancel the ad. But again, what is the sick part? You say to a medical student, draw yourself working as a doctor. Look what they draw. Where the hell are you? Where are the people? He's a doctor for the wrong reasons. See, a lot of students write, I'm fascinated by the human body. Yeah, I was going to become a veterinarian because I couldn't deal with the pain of taking care of people. And a veterinarian said to me, don't. I said, why not? He said, people bring the pets in. You see, people come in the body. But this, to me, is what being a doctor is. This is another student. He's not touching her with a stethoscope. He's becoming one with her, handing her a tissue. And don't forget that with your families. And words can become swords. We're not trained how to talk to you. So I can kill people with my words. This was done by one of our children. See, I talked to you about my past life. Imagine after experiencing that, having your kid, a pipsqueak, come home from school and say, Dad, look what I did at school as an art project. Why would that enter his mind? I think he's teaching me something. You can kill or cure with a sword. You can kill or cure with words. So that's hanging in our wall. What are doctors trained to do? Think. This kid is dying on Christmas Day, and nobody's holding the kid. And we're thinking. It's sick. And this is what most of you don't know it, because usually what I say is, who do you want to operate on you, him or him? And most people vote for him. But, what Elizabeth taught me, this was painted a self-portrait the year before I drew that for her. Yeah, you had to be a sick man to paint yourself totally covered up, but that was the pain. See, what needed to be uncovered was not skin. As Jung wrote, there are many myths and fairy tales where the hero's head is shaved, like with a monk. So it's about initiation and spirituality. Put your desk against the wall. Don't keep yourself from people. Just want to show you my therapy group, then we'll be done. My therapist is Miracle. She's a black and white Jewish psychotherapist who's doing guided imagery here with everybody. And her name came, again, imagine having a dream. A cat walks up to you and says, my name is Miracle. Here's what you should do for your cancer. And the woman got her doctor to do what the cat told her and is alive. Then we do Tai Chi and aerobics. Then we sit and talk. Next to Miracle is Dickens. He's a Buddhist, and they don't say much. Gabriel, my Muslim friend, stares at Mecca. On the bottom shelf, she's hard to see, but her name is Penny, and that's why I adopted her. She looked like a penny when she was born. And she's from Our Lady of Perpetual Responsibility, Catholic with a lot of guilt, and sits on the bottom shelf. But you can see she's up there. So we're capable of change. She's up there next to Miracle. And last but not least, surround yourself with nature. Even if you're in a hospital room, you'll heal faster. A butterfly we rescued that stayed with us for a day and a half that I felt was a spirit of a friend of mine who had died. But it was just eerie and mystical. And those things happen. And get your baby pictures out, put them around where you live. And remember, this time of the year is a great teacher. That don't spend your life as a green leaf on the tree, but become your unique individual self. Thank you. Oh, I might as well leave it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bernie. We're going to have a 15-minute break, And again, the water is in the front, bathrooms both in front and the back. This event has been webcast live through www.medicineandspirituality.org, also www.tvcei.com.